Good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk to you about your microbiome. So let me get started. My name is Dr. Mitra Ray. I'm going to start sharing my presentation with you. Here, play. Okay, so the title of this talk is Make Peace with Your Microbiome, From Cradle to Longevety. Let me start by sharing my family with you. This is my husband, Doug, in the middle, and my two daughters, Leela and Nira. And we have raised them to be not just aware of their nutrition, but also aware of people and cultures and respect people around the world. And starting with our own culture, my own culture, I was born in India, and my father raised me to do the same. He was not only an engineer, but he also studied comparative religion and cultures around the world. And starting with my own, I learned about the Vedas. And the Vedas are an interesting ancient scripture from India that talk about life in various phases. Now, I'm a very holistic person in my thinking, and I appreciate this approach to talking about rules, about, how to live an amazing life. Not rules isn't exactly right, but just honoring the different stages of life, such as the student stage, the household or civic duty stage, the hermit meditation stage, and the wandering ascetic stage. Now, I like the way this is laid out, except that in today's world, I'm not sure how many of us want to enter that wandering ascetic stage where you get so old you just are supposed to leave your tribe and go off into the woods and die. So for any teaching to be relevant in today's world, it has to kind of catch up to today's world. And that goes for biology too. I'm not here to talk about theology or religion with you. I'm here to talk about nutrition and biology, and I want to tell you that there's a new biology in town, and it's being rewritten, and there's so much exciting new information. Back in 2012, we started to see the first big publications come out in our top science journals, as well as our business journals, talking about the gut microbiota, and that we're actually the mothership, which I've been saying for a long time, with a lot of passengers on board. And when you want to study your health, you have to really honor all these microbes that are inside us. So the existing medicine today that we have is actually based in 19th century biology. Now, I'm not against modern medicine. In fact, I tore my ACL last year skiing, and I had to get it repaired, and I'm very, very thankful for modern medicine. But when it comes to chronic illness, I think that we really have to start taking responsibility ourselves for our own actions and really think about our body holistically, including the microbes that live inside us. And the drug therapy, antibiotic surgeries that we have today are really based in 19th century biology. Let me explain what I mean by that. It was developed during a time where the environment was conducive to infectious disease. People started living in crowded urban centers, and so what happened is, you wanted to live on the top floor because people were throwing their garbage out on the street, and those piles of garbage were a great place for microbes to start taking hold. And so through sanitation mostly, and antibiotics and whatnot, but a lot of people think basically because of sanitation, we have seen a huge decline in infectious disease, as well as vaccinations maybe have helped as well, but also segregation of people has helped. But what has happened today is we have traded, between 1900 and 1950, you see this reduction in infectious disease, but we see now from the 1950s to today's world in the 2017, now we are seeing that autoimmune diseases and autism are on the rise. And it's not just those. In fact, there are all these what are called NCDs, non-communicable diseases, that are linked to the microbiome. And these are the ones we know of. I think every chronic illness is going to be linked to the microbiome. So this is something that gives us pause for thought. And the other thing to consider is that the non-communicable diseases are on the rise. The high-income countries already have, 80, 90% of the people have, some kind of NCDs, and the other countries are catching up with the Western world, so to speak. So let me introduce a new term to you, the human superorganism, which is you and your microbiota. technically speaking, your microbiota represents all the bacteria and fungi and protozoa that live inside you. These are little microorganisms. And the microbiome very technically refers to the genetic material of the microbiota. But people kind of interchange those terms. You might find me interchanging those terms, but technically that's one is the genome and one is the creatures themselves. So now this slide is a little bit technical, and I'm going to read it to you. NCDs, this is important though. NCDs, non-communicable diseases, get programmed in early life. And I really liked speaking to the next generation and young moms and young dads about this, because we have such an ability to turn this, trend around by starting from birth till age 4. We really need to help that child kind of set up its immune system to understand the difference between microbes that are helpful to us versus microbes that are not, or even populations of microbes as they change can become helpful or harmful. And uncontrolled inflammation maintains the disease state, with microbiome problems initiating and maintaining the unhealthy inflammation. So when the immune system is fighting the microbiota, you get inflammation. And having one NCD increases the chances of developing one or more further specific NCDs. And the microbiome status affects the risk of NCDs and determines the effectiveness of drug therapies. So the new medicine, there's a new medicine in town, and we can see this by the trend of the exponential rise in journal articles and patents and patent applications that refer to the microbiome. Again, as I said, you are the mothership with a lot of passengers on board. What does this really mean? It means that only 10% of your 100 trillion microbial of your cells are your cells. There's 100 trillion microbial cells versus 10 trillion human cells. And when it comes to your genetic material, only 1% or maybe even less than 1% of the genome that is inside you is your human genome. The rest belongs to the microbiota. So the good news is that your destiny is not determined by your genes. So next time you go into a doctor's office and they have you fill out those, do you have, diabetes or heart disease or cancer in your family history, I don't fill out those forms, to tell you the truth, because I know the real story of our genetic complexity. We inherit 2 parallel genomes. One is from our parents. It's mostly stable. There can be some damage from oxidative stress. Also, good nutrition can help us express our best DNA. But what's more important is the microbiome that we hopefully inherit from our mother, which is extremely dynamic, and there's great variance between people. And this sequencing technology has allowed us to see different kinds of microbes that live in different parts of the body. And what scientists are finding the most interesting are the colon and the vagina. Sorry, men, I don't know what to say about that, but your colon's important. So let me ask you some questions. How many of you out there know if you were born through cesarean section, or were you breastfed or formula fed? Have you taken antibiotics, especially during the first 4 years of life? Have you eaten gluten, wheat, rye, or barley lately? Have you not played outdoors enough? Are you obsessed with a clean environment? Have you eaten sugary foods or artificial sweeteners? Have you eaten meat, fish, poultry, and cheese, dairy foods regularly? So this has all affected your microbiota. And this is a picture of a healthy gut versus an unhealthy gut. At a cross-section of a large intestine on the left-hand side shows it's normal and there's no inflammation. On the right side, you see it's very red and inflamed. And if you look at in the middle are the 2 microbiome signatures of a healthy microbiome in the left side and an unhealthy microbiome on the right side that is causing a war in the intestines, because your immune system is very, very much present. Most of your immune system is at work in your gut, actually. And Hippocrates, this is why Hippocrates figured this out a long time ago, that all diseases begin in the gut. So what you have on the right-hand side is a war, and it's called dysbiosis, which is opposed to symbiosis. And, and your gut is a warm, friendly place for microbes, all kinds of good ones and bad ones, to live, because there's a constant supply of food. It's warm, it's cozy, it's a great place to have sex and reproduce for your microbiome. So, that's why your gut is so important. Now, weight gain is actually you know, a huge problem in our society today, and really it's the result of dysbiosis. So what happens to us when we get fat is our bacteria that comes out in our feces, we can see a huge change in different um, populations of bacteria, like the firmicutes are a huge family of bacteria that live in your gut, and the bacteroidetes are another huge family of bacteria. But when the ratio changes, when we become overweight, what happens is the ratio of these bacteria changes, also changes with diabetes. And some other functional bacteria like bifidobacteria decrease. So we don't want this. And the other thing is that all these autoimmune diseases we know are also, I'm sorry, not autoimmune, all these NCDs are related to obesity. So obesity is a problem, you know, I'm not just talking about, you know, how you look and how you feel, which is of course very important, but also the risk factor that goes along with obesity, because your microbiota is off track, you don't have the right microbiota, and therefore all these other chronic illnesses show up in the body. So studies have shown that somewhere between 50 to 80% of all dieters will put weight back on. So this is a challenge. And why is that? Why do people fail? Why does it not work for them? Well, it's because we have two brains. Did you know that? We have one brain up here, and then we have our gut brain, which is called your enteric brain. So after this talk, you might want to have a salad for your next meal, but your gut brain, which is actually a louder voice because there's more of them, they're going to want cheeseburger and fries if you've been feeding them cheeseburger and fries. They want the food that they've been eating. So the pathogens are going to ask for the food that they're eating. So it's very hard to kind of get around this battle between the two brains unless you understand and respect what that looks like. So imagine that your bacteria like this. Imagine you have this plush green lawn, and that's a flourishing gut ecosystem. And let's say you've been hit by antibiotics at some point in your life, which is pretty much everybody. And what happens is you've devastated this ecosystem now, and without actually proactively doing something about it, what has grown back is weeds. And this causes all kinds of health challenges. And because it happens kind of slowly, we don't immediately feel the effects of it. But how do we fix it? How do we get that lawn back to being a restored gut ecosystem? Well, you can take some probiotics. There's a lot of probiotics on the market today. This is helpful bacteria that can help you kind of create an environment that's conducive to your own good bacteria coming back to life. It's got limited potential, I would say. It's definitely helpful. But the thing is that we can only culture, you know, maybe I don't know, less than 30 strains, I think, that you can find in the health food store, whereas you have the potential, there's over 30,000 different kinds of possibly good species that you need in your body. So you can't really buy your microbiota on a health food store. Juice Plus capsules do have Lactobacillus acidophilus, which are good prebiotics that do help with digestion, and it's good to have that in the products. But another approach that people take is replacing bacteria. Now, this I find really interesting. You see, because you can take the feces from a person that is obese and transplant that into sterile mice and turn the mice obese. And you can take the feces from a normal weight person and transplant that into the mice, and they will stay normal weight. So fecal transplants are a thing. So that's definitely one approach you can take to weight loss. But at the end of the day, how long is it going to last? And you also have to wonder about who's donating their feces, for instance, because one could be skinny, but you know, pathological in their behavior. Who knows? So you have to be careful. I know what you're thinking. I did not need to know that, Dr. Mitra. Okay, so the large intestine is a vital organ. This is a very important thing I want you to understand. Now, for those of you that maybe have had parts of your intestine removed, the same information that I'm telling you still applies, because you know you still have lots of small intestine, and hopefully parts of your large intestine are still there, and you have to work with what you have to work with. But if you haven't had anything removed, I want to tell you, if you have a doctor telling you that what we need to do is remove part of your intestine, I want you to think of it like he or she, the doctor might as well be saying they want to remove a part of your brain. Okay, it's a vital organ, and it's not. There's other ways to resolve NCDs through diet and exercise have been proven to work, and I will give you some solutions that in time can turn things around and really relatively quickly. So the best approach in my mind is to actually feed the helpful bacteria. That's the idea of feeding yourself prebiotics. And that's the best way, I think, we're going to restore things. And this is completely within your control. So I was born in Kolkata, India, which, you know, is, you can think of, especially when I was born, as a third world country. But I'll tell you something, my body was in homeostasis and my microbiome was in symbiosis. In fact, even after I moved to the United States when I was 8 with my family, my mom cooked at home and we didn't eat out much. And so I was still in homeostasis until I went to university. I remember the all-you-can-eat buffets at Cornell, and then by the time I was at Stanford, my eating habits and lifestyle habits were terrible. I drank coffee like I should have been drinking water. You know, I drank coffee all day long, all night long. I had horrible sleeping habits, and none of that helped me. And so my body got into dysbiosis over time. And I remember struggling with my health a little bit and starting to read all about nutrition. And the word phytochemicals was introduced to us in the early 90s. I remember reading this. And after that, I started juicing. And I remember sitting at my kitchen table one day and somebody brought me a brochure on a product called Juice Plus. And because I had been juicing, when I saw this product, the first thing I said is, I should have thought of this, because I was juicing in the kitchen and I was using the same kind of technique in the lab to dehydrate cells for experimentation. And what it showed was that if you were to make fresh juice from the same, back then there was only orchard and garden blend, and if you were to make the juice from the same 7 fruits and 8 veggies that go into making their orchard and garden blend, that you'd have to drink several glasses of juice to get the same nutrition, but without you know, getting the sugar and calories, and the fiber was in there too, and whereas juicing takes out the fiber. So that really caught my attention, so I decided to try it. And I wasn't really expecting anything. I just thought this was a great idea because I could never take vitamins, and I didn't think that was, you know, taking isolated vitamins never made much sense to me, because food is what we need. And being the smart, you know, mathematician that I was, I thought, well, you know, if I do a price comparison, because I was on a student's budget, compare the capsules, you know, I get 30 fruits and veggies for about, you know, several bucks a day. And this is comparable pricing in other parts of the world, compared to the other day, I bought a small, teeny little, that bottle right there, with 6 fruits and 6 veggies in it for $6. So I'm a smart girl. I decided to take Juice Plus, even though I was on a student's budget. But what I didn't expect was that my neck injury, I had a neck injury from when I was a kid, that got worse and worse, and me hovering over microscopes made it worse, and I would go see a physical therapist and spend hundreds of dollars I didn't have. And that just started to get better. Within 6 weeks, my therapist was saying, you know, what are you doing? Because you're really healing. And then I got really curious, and I just thought, well, you know, what's in this stuff? And here I was, being funded by the National Institutes of Health and the American Cancer Society to study, you know, Alzheimer's and cancer. And I just could not believe how many papers, I read about 200 papers, honestly, and all the ingredients that go into Juice Plus. And I learned, you know, like the bromelain in the core of the pineapple and the papain in the seeds of the papaya. They are natural anti-inflammatories. And while I had given myself an ulcer from taking so much ibuprofen, just 6 weeks on this product, I'd never took ibuprofen again. And I've been taking Juice Plus now for going on 23 years, you know, and I've never done anything consistently for 23 years. But this product made a lot of sense, continues to make sense. I've given it to my family, you know, I've shared it with thousands of people around the world consistently for those 23 years. And today we have research now. You know, we have all kinds of research. I'll share more about that, but here there's 2 studies that were done at the University of South Carolina, and as well as the Medical University in Graz, Austria, showing that taking Juice Plus does reduce systemic inflammation. So the next, I'm glad that that happened to me when it did, and because I was 30 when I started taking Juice Plus, because the next thing that happened is I got pregnant. And I'm so glad that I had Juice Plus and the complete shakes, which I'll talk about more later, in my system when I got pregnant. And I want to tell all the expecting mothers, or, you know, mothers to be, or if you're even thinking about having a kid, you definitely want to get on Juice Plus, stay on Juice Plus, and stay on Juice Plus during breastfeeding and all of that, and certainly start giving it to your kids as soon as possible, because remember, those first 4 years of life actually begin in the womb, and this is the best time to give your unborn child the gift of plants, you know. And on the other flip side is we are seeing a lot of infertility in today's world, and that is a function of dysbiosis again, because if the body is fighting a war, waging a war against pathogens, it's very hard to have the resources to support a child. You know, you can't carry a fetus if you're fighting a huge war within you against the microbes that you have. Now, I'm going to share some stories with you. Here's Lindsay. Lindsay's a personal trainer, and she kind of thought she knew a lot about nutrition, but she had this skin issue. And when she got on Juice Plus, her skin cleared up. So that's great. But what I learned later about Lindsay was that she was struggled. She and her husband were looking at all kinds of expensive options in order to have a baby, because she was having trouble getting pregnant. Well, guess what? Boom. She gets on Juice Plus. Not only does her skin clear, but she gets pregnant, and then she has the baby, and she loses the weight really quickly as well, staying on the products. And today, she's the mother of 2 beautiful Juice Plus kids. Here's another story. Bailey also was trying to get pregnant, and she got on this program that I'll describe in a bit. And she wasn't really looking to lose weight. It was just a bonus. But what happened is that she got pregnant. And remember this picture, because I will share a picture of her son later in the presentation. So it's really exciting what can happen when you kind of make peace with your microbiota. Beyond pregnancy, once you have the baby, now, you know, again, whatever's happened in the past has happened in the past. Don't blame your mom, don't blame yourself for whatever choices you've made. But moving forward, I really love to teach young moms, you know, what really makes a difference for your child. And we see that if you compare babies that were vaginally born and breastfed, they have very healthy microbiota compared to vaginally born and bottle fed versus C-section. And this becomes very important. So what happens is that, you know, and I had to, you know, I had 2 natural childbirths, and as a scientist, I had to ask the question, like, who came up with this plan that you have to like squeeze this baby out, you know, if you've had a vaginal birth, you know what I'm talking about, right? And I get it now. It's an inoculation of my bacteria, not just my bacteria, but my immune intelligence, and not just my immune intelligence with, you know, the microbiota in my environment, but also the entire maternal lineage. And that's what we're really passing on to the child, is this immune intelligence from not just you, but your mom and your mom's mom, and etc. And this is actually very, very important to consider. When you look at the bacteria on a newborn born through cesarean, they have bacteria from the skin, versus a vaginal birth has, you know, bacteria from the gut and the vagina of the mom, which helps to establish a much healthier microbiota for the child early in life. And there's a link between autoimmune diseases and cesarean births as well. So let's look at increasing the odds of a successful pregnancy with Juice Plus. The objective for a pregnant woman is to reduce obesity prior to pregnancy, reduce excessive weight gain during pregnancy, and reduce, believe it or not, periodontal disease. So you want healthy gums as well, and which in turn reduces risk of cesarean and risk of hyperinsulinemia in infancy and metabolic syndrome, which can lead to diabetes and heart disease later in life. So this is, again, this is the foundation for the baby. And here we have a product that also is the only thing that dentists have found, besides the normal cleaning for periodontal outcomes. Taking Juice Plus increases gum health. So that is covered by Juice Plus. as well as this is a retroactive study done by Dr. Odom. And what he looked at, he was an OBGYN, and he started to give his patients Juice Plus. And he worked with low-income families. So he was really startled to see that there was a trend in his Juice Plus moms versus other OBGYNs in his practice who only use prenatals. And what he found is that his group of 179 moms had 0% preterm delivery and preeclampsia, which is high blood pressure in the mom, low birth weight, 1%, and 0% admissions into neonatal intensive care unit, and therefore respiratory distress syndrome. So this is exciting compared to, the rest of his practice. So the next thing I want to talk about is breastfeeding the microbiome. Your microbiome wants to eat. I mean, I know that most people think of breast milk as a source of protein and fat and, even cholesterol. But another, possibly the most important nutrient you get from milk is these long chain sugars called oligosaccharides. And this is really profound because your good bacteria eat plant sugars, so to speak. And in some ways, you can think of breast milk as us making these sugars that later then come from plants. These are oligosaccharides. These are long chain sugars that we can't break down. The baby can't break down, but the good bacteria in the baby breaks down and helps to establish good foundation for the microbiota to develop fully in the child. So breastfeeding is really helpful to the microbiota. And I think of breast milk now as a fatty fruit. In fact, if you look at plants are really amazing. Plants kind of take the 4 elements and create life, create matter. So the 4 elements, so you have air, carbon dioxide, you have water, you have light in terms of photons from the sun, and you have minerals from the soil. And from that, through photosynthesis, plants make sugars. And sugars are then used by all living things to break down for energy. And plants also make the oxygen we breathe. And there's so much misunderstanding about the word carbohydrate today. I'm hoping to help elucidate. So sugar, this molecule that you see here, C6H12O6, that's your basic sugar molecule. And chains of those, like I showed the oligosaccharide earlier, this one, so that's a chain of those sugars. So they have that basic 6 carbon structure, and then there's chains of them that branch out and make starches, and then even more complex fibers that are made and that we can't break down, but again, our good bacteria uses them. So here's the thing, you may not be a vegan, but your good bacteria are vegan. So you have to eat enough plants to feed your good bacteria to keep, autoimmune diseases and other non-communicable diseases at bay. So again, breast milk is a fatty fruit. If you think of it that way, what comes next for the child? I think what comes next is eating fruits. A lot of moms get upset because their child is not eating broccoli yet or Brussels sprouts. Well, their taste buds develop. Fruit is a perfectly great thing to feed your children because they're growing so fast. They actually need more sugar but not processed. I'm not talking about Fruit Loops here. I'm talking about fruit, okay, not Fruit Loops. So really important to understand. Raw fruits that haven't been highly processed and turned into, box cereals and whatnot. That's not real food for your child. But give your child apples, oranges, bananas, everything, like a variety of fruit. And they will slowly get used to vegetables as they get older. And maybe one day they don't like broccoli, and then the next day they wake up and like broccoli. So you have to keep introducing new foods to your child, new plants, if you will. What else can we do to help the child? Well, we've already talked about, cesarean births. So we should be like birds. We should be pre-masticating our food. That's another way to transfer bacteria. Breastfeeding, a lot of skin-to-skin contact, as well as vaginal birth. What doesn't help is bottle feeding, early life antibiotics, cesarean section, and early extensive bathing and dental amalgams, okay? So we need to really protect those young babies from all these things that we are now learning are really not helpful to set up the child for a long, healthy life. So we have this huge problem called obesity around the world. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? It's like it's perceived as such a complicated problem. Here's what we do. We give the kids fruit to eat, plants to eat, little rice, a little some lentil soup, you know, teach them how to eat plants. And obesity will not be a problem, because then you reestablish the right microbiota and stop injecting them with antibiotics and other kinds of drugs. Do what we can to reestablish that microbiota. And when we talked about the two brains, the gut produces, your gut bacteria produces 75% of the neurotransmitters and hormones that regulate your behavior. They are controlling you. It's like aliens. They are controlling you. Okay? And so you have to figure out who to feed. And the same thing for your child. You have to train that child to feed the right foods to that gut microbiota. And one of the things I really appreciate about Juice Plus is the Juice Plus Children's Health Study, where every adult that starts Juice Plus can sponsor a child to get the Orchard and Garden Blend for free for up to 4 years, from the ages of 4 till 18, or full-time college students. And what we find is that we can retrain their gut bacteria to crave the right foods, because kids that are on this health study, and there's hundreds of thousands of them around the world, they are eating more fruits and vegetables, and they're eating less fast food and drinking less soft drinks. There's other health benefits too, but those are two biggies, talking about feeding the right foods to your microbiota and changing their cravings. And we know, I talked about this before, that we can change the bacteria. Well, the bacteria ratios change when you have obesity and diabetes. Well, guess what? There's a study done with Juice Plus in young boys, and what they found is that we can improve insulin resistance and reduce belly fat in adolescent boys. That is most definitely due to being able to change their microbiota. In fact, there is a microbiota study underway. In fact, if you look at all the health markers that become better through Juice Plus, I would have to say the only way that's happening is because we're improving the microbiota. That has to be the case. So what else should we be feeding the microbiome? Again, we've got to talk about the food. So this is a very interesting study that was done by Eric Alm at MIT. And scientists are a bit crazy. This guy and his colleagues did a very interesting experiment where they, imagine taking poop samples for an entire year, also cataloging 300 different lifestyle factors, for an entire year, day after day after day. Well, that's what these guys did. And with all those 300 factors, they only found 2 things. And once again, that whole thing about flossing keeps coming up for me. So I started flossing when I saw this. Only 2 things help. Flossing does help, but the thing that helps the most, of all those 300 factors that they studied, flossing helps, but the thing that helps the most is fiber in the diet. And what they found is, and this data is very complex, because it's actually like 3-dimensional data. What we see is that for every 10-gram increase in fiber today, tomorrow you'll have 11% increase in good, healthy, bacteria and populations of bacteria that are going to help you regulate your body better. In fact, if we look at the entire human microbiome project done in the United States, and if you look at the bacterial population, the microbiota of people living in the United States, and compare them to tribes, true nomads that still exist in South America and in Africa, what we find is that those nomads have much what I would call sexier bacteria. They've got really healthy microbiota, and that's because they get about 100 grams of fiber a day in their diet. They're eating roots and grub and tree bark and all this stuff. And when people talk about the paleo diet, I'm thinking this is the paleo diet. If you think about it, like this is what's mostly available. We only hunted when we ran out of food to eat in the winter, and even then, in all the archaeological digs, they've never found a refrigerator. So certainly, if they went out for a hunt, it would be food for a week just to get through like starvation periods. It wasn't like eggs in the morning, ham sandwich at lunch, and meatloaf for dinner or whatever. That's just not what that is not a paleo diet. So the Juice Plus Complete is an excellent source of fiber and resistant starches that feed your good bacteria. We've got a natural blend of all kinds of those things that you may not understand, like fructooligosaccharides and plant cellulose and soy fiber and rice bran and pectin and apple fiber, and there's arabic and gur and xanthan, all those things. This proprietary fiber blend, these are food for your good bacteria, and it will help you reestablish a good microbiome. Now, I want to tell you, sometimes people have trouble in the beginning, and I'll talk more about that later. But initially, that you do have this die-off. As you start to feed the good guys, the bad guys start to starve, and then there's a war. The good guys also start to attack the bad guys, and there's die-off. And sometimes you get bloating and gas. So the first 3 days, you just got to get past the first 3 days, because we're talking about the rest of your life here, optimal health for the rest of your life. But it is detox that you kind of have to go through. And why we want to go through it, because there are nutrients that you cannot make, critical nutrients that you cannot make and you cannot eat. We depend on our good microbiota to make these for us. And you don't have to memorize all this, but I just want you to know, you've got to feed these guys. So they make them, like these guys are eating. We have to eat more like them. We need more plants. Well, here's a way to get 44, 45 plants into your system every single day, and so I do 2 shakes a day and take my capsules, because whether I'm having, and I eat mostly plants anyway, but this is like my background, and this is easy to do, and it's so cost effective immediately, because it's, like the shakes are about a couple of bucks a day, which is cheaper than a coffee at Starbucks or a glass of wine. And then the whole thing, depending on what country you live in, is somewhere between $6 and $10 a day to do 2 shakes a day and capsules. And once people get on it, they can realize, oh my gosh, this is like cheaper than eating, and it's more nutrition than you can pack into a meal normally when you prepare a meal. So it's a very cost-effective way to add plants, and it's part of a program I've developed to feed your microbiota. So this is a really, really key, is a foundational piece for this program I'm about to share with you. So this program came about because I was doing women's retreats for 5 years, and people would come to me and spend lots of money and, spend 7 days with me, and I would create amazing results in 7 days. However, then they'd go home and it'd be very hard to sustain those kinds of, I wasn't cooking for them every day. I wasn't doing yoga with them every day, all the things that we did to help people kind of, sleep right, all of that. Well, what happened is, what happens to people is when you eat, you've got to put sugar in your body. You can't, when you talk about low carb diet, that means so many different things to so many people. So I want to talk about the fact that you need carbohydrates, you need sugar in your body, you need blood glucose levels to go up. But you want it to go up in this zone of willpower. What happens when you start your day at Starbucks with a mocha breve latte frappuccino for, $12, $20 or whatever, and then you have a scone to go with it, is your blood sugar goes way up like that light blue curve, and then a couple hours later it dips down in this place where you hate everybody, okay? And you have no self-control, and you will eat anything in sight, and you're an aggressive driver, So we want you to be in that zone of willpower by eating foods that have carbohydrates, have the sugar your body's looking for, but also has fiber to slow down the entry of the sugar, because the sugar has to be broken down by the bacteria before you can utilize it. And that's what eating plants in whole food form provide for you. So Kim Hughes showed up at my retreat one year, and a year later, she comes back and she's 10 dress sizes down in 9 months. And she's been able to keep this off now for actually going on 4 years now. And I asked her when she came back the second year, what had happened? She looked, not only was she 10 dress sizes down, but she looked 10 years younger, and she was like acting like a different person. And she said, Mitra, the only way I could really, eat all these plants was to start doing 2 of these complete shakes a day. And that made a lot of sense to me, because I was studying willpower. And I just explained to you how willpower is a function of blood sugar. And I thought, oh, wow, Juice Plus Complete is a low glycemic load food. Even though you see sugar, some people go, oh, sugar is like one of the first ingredients. Well, if apples came with a label, or broccoli, sugar, any plant, sugar would be one of the first ingredients, if not the first. But it's got all this fiber, which makes it a low glycemic load food. And that's what's really important. So I call this program initially Transform 30, and now it's been rewritten as Shred 10, because we realized Transform 30 was like 30 days, to kind of follow these guidelines, 80 to 90%, kind of 80–90% of the time. But we found that if people follow the guidelines 100%, or as close to 100% as possible for 10 days, they got even better results faster. So what the Shred 10 program looks like, especially for the first 4 months, is because Juice Plus products come in 4-month supply, that you take once a month, 10 days, which is only one weekend, ladies and gentlemen, one weekend where you follow these guidelines, which I'm going to share with you in a bit. But let me explain to you why you'll be able to follow the guidelines, because you'll have willpower. Why does blood sugar affect willpower? Because the kind of carbohydrates you eat give you willpower or take away your willpower. So on the left side, you have the good ones that give you willpower, and the bad ones that take it away from you and feed your bad microbiome. So what happens if you eat greens and non-starchy vegetables and whole grains, besides wheat, rye, and barley, but there's many other grains that you can eat, like rice, quinoa, millet, tapioca, semolina, starchy vegetables, fruits, and they have fiber. They're full of fiber. And they also have all kinds of important micronutrients that are also being utilized by you and your gut, your microbiota. And they are prebiotics. They're food for your microbiota. On this side of the equation, you have parasite food. You have to understand you're feeding your parasites when you eat this kind of stuff. So people might say, where do I get my protein then if I eat all these plants? Well, all living things have protein. So if you were to compare equal parts of tomatoes, spinach, lima beans, peas, and potatoes to equal parts of, now let's see, I can't see this on my screen, but you probably can, of different kind of animal products, and compare 500 calories of each, what you see is that each of these groups, the plant-based foods, 500 calories of plant-based versus animal-based, they basically have the same amount of protein, because proteins are enzymes that are what catalyzes all the biological reactions in all living things. So all living things have enzymes, that's why they're living things. So they're full of protein. There's no such thing as protein deficiency. In fact, when people say, oh, I have to eat proteins or I have to eat carbs, when you break down foods like that, that's not how it works in the real world. Real food, plants have protein, plants have carbohydrates, plants have fats. They have the 4 grams of fat in the plant column are the omega fats that we can't make and we need in our body. The animal side has 9 times more fat, 36 grams compared to 4. And that is mostly saturated fat, as well as cholesterol, which plants don't have. Also, these nutrients, and look at this. You've got, if you look under the fiber, dietary fiber, you get 31 grams of fiber in just 500 calories of fat of plant products. So we want those 31 grams of fiber. On the animal side, there's nothing there. There's some nutrients left, and the only reason there's any micronutrients on the right side of the equation, like folate or whatever. I mean, look at folate on one side versus the other. Folate, the word comes from foliage, is on the animal side. Those animals ate some plants. And so I don't know about you, but I like to get my nutrients firsthand. I don't need a middleman in between me. On the other side is where you pick up a lot of pathogens and parasite food. So the other thing is undigested. If you eat too much protein, if you're always putting like extra protein and whey protein or whatever into your shake, what happens is proteins are, if you think of them as a string of pearls, and they're made up of amino acids, right? So individual amino acids, we need to break down every last amino acid in order to absorb that protein. And when you eat too much, you can't break it all down. And so what happens, you get little chunks of protein. They're called peptides, and they look like viruses or, other pathogens entering our body. So it triggers the immune system into an unnecessary war. So when you see articles like this, if an article says, high fat, high sugar diets lead to obesity, The translation is high fat means animal products and high sugar means the bad carbohydrates. You really have to understand what high fat means. High fat means animal products. There's no such thing as lean protein, except plants. Plants are the only lean protein. And high sugar means bad carbohydrates. It does not mean that you can't have a bowl of brown rice or whatever. Now, a really important question. What happens to your flesh when you die? What happens to your flesh? What happens is it rots. It rots because of little microorganisms that start to feed off your body. So I just want to ask you an important question, food for thought. What bacteria do you want to feed? Not just bacteria, microorganisms. This slide should really say which microorganisms do you want to feed? Flesh-eating ones or vegan ones? Okay, so now let's get on to the challenge that I talked about earlier, Shred 10. This is how we're going to help you establish much healthier microbiota. You're going to eat more real food and include the Juice Plus trio of capsules and 2 shakes. Drink lots of water. If you haven't heard my toxicity talk, we also need lots of water to get rid of the toxins, the environmental toxins and the food toxins we're always exposed to. We also need to sleep so we can get rid of those toxins. And also our microbiota follow a circadian rhythm. They like to eat during the day and they like to sleep at night. So, you know, eating late night meals doesn't help. You want to exercise most days. That's not so, that most people are trying to exercise because of weight loss. I want to tell you, you want to exercise to help your immune system and your brain work better and your attitude and other things. When it comes to caloric expenditure, I mean, if you're trying to lose weight, you've got to manage it through your diet. You're not going to manage it through your exercise. You might lean out, but you will not lose weight through exercise alone unless you change your diet. So diet is 80% of the weight loss equation, but we don't want just weight loss. We want real health. Weight loss is a result of attaining a proper microbiota. Therefore, systems start to work better in your body, a better immune system, better, you know, the gut is working better, everything's working better, and therefore you lose weight. Okay, you want to eliminate gluten. Gluten because gluten creates holes in your intestines basically every time you eat. No human being can digest gluten. Some are more sensitive than others, but just because you don't have like something like celiac doesn't mean you can break down gluten. And gluten is a protein that opens up your intestinal lining, which gives you leaky gut every time you eat it. So you don't want to do that. Dairy is the #1 promoter of cancer that has been researched ever. Caffeine is not great. In fact, if you join the Shred group, you will get a guidebook and it'll explain more about why these factors are so important. So I'm going to just quickly list them. You want to reduce caffeine and alcohol. Most people know that's not great for you. Definitely reduce processed food. So just because I said no gluten doesn't mean eat gluten-free pasta. You know, you really want to eat more vegetables. You want to shoot for 100 grams of fiber from whole grains and unprocessed. If you're eating whole grains, it depends on how much your activity level is, how much you should eat. If weight loss is your goal, you may not want to eat more than a cup of rice at a time or something. Whereas if you're an athlete, you might need 3 cups of rice, you know what I mean? But if they come from the plant kingdom, you're going to do just fine. Reduce artificial and refined sugars and don't eat after 6 because your gut bacteria are not there to digest bacteria, your food for you after 6. So that causes dysbiosis for sure. So here are some stories. Vicky Martini was a veteran personal trainer with 25 years of experience, and after being hospitalized for toxic levels of undigested whey protein in my gut, all in the attempt to achieve optimal fitness, I began to seek answers. I have experienced metabolic burnout, high protein ketosis from competing in bodybuilding and fitness events, and most recently, adrenal exhaustion. Shred 10 has helped save me, my health, and my profession with Juice Plus. She's very grateful. Here's a woman who was in a fitness competition, and you see that little award on the floor, and she won that after she switched from whey protein to our complete shakes and this Shred 10 program. So we talked about food for the healthful bacteria being the most important thing, and this can also help us with, you know, these non-communicable diseases. Here's Lynn in Indianapolis who lost 40 pounds in 4 months. She's off all her meds, including high blood pressure, cholesterol, and diabetes. No more hormonal hot flashes and insomnia, feeling great, loves this program. Okay. Michelle, she's great. Not only did she lose weight, but she carries herself differently, so she's taller, you know. Michael has lost, uh, I think, over 80 pounds now. His wife, I believe, is a vegan. Anyway, she's been trying to help him lose weight for a long time, but it wasn't until he found this program that he was able to actually do this. He's a very busy business guy, and he just sat at his desk and had horrible eating habits. But Shred 10 was something he could do with his busy life, and that's what helped him become very, very encouraged, because he had tried so many other things, and he's one of the biggest fans. So, but it's not just for weight loss. This is my youngest daughter. You know, I could talk about both my daughters, because when we talk about athletes, but I just want to say that both of them are amazing students and amazing athletes. And I'm talking specifically about Mira because she's a competitive skater, and her coach recently told me that she has had 2 of the 3 injuries that take out most competitive skaters, and Mira has, you know, through her practice, been able to, through her nutrition, been able to recover from those very serious injuries, and she's competing better than ever. She looks up to these 2 wonderful Olympians, Ariana Cookers and Rebecca Soni, who are world record holders in the world of swimming and have been to the Olympics. And Rebecca has 6 Olympic medals to her name, and they are also big fans of this program. Tim Emmett, if you Google him, you will see, you know, incredible pictures like this of him rock climbing all over the world. He's just a fantastic guy. And he says, Shred 10, Transform 30, basically same guidelines, is the roadmap I've been looking for to take my climbing to the next level. Since I started it 18 months ago, I turned 40 and climbed my hardest rock climb and also ice climb of my professional career. And he continues to do that. He's doing better than ever. So he's a big fan. Now, Juice Plus is also an abundant source of this huge category of micronutrients called polyphenols. Why are polyphenols so important? Because polyphenols are like the anti-aging nutrient that we can get through food. They slow down the aging process in the body. They do many, many things in the body, but one of the most exciting things they can do, you know, is slow down the aging process. And again, you need the right microbiome to process those polyphenols. And oh, by the way, this study showed that Juice Plus capsules are a hugely abundant source. I mean, you know, another way to get high amounts of polyphenols is you could chew on cloves all day, or dried spearmint, or sweet basil, or chew on cinnamon bark. And that's all great, but I'm talking about, I'm a busy mom, I got kids. I don't know if I can get my kids to chew on cinnamon bark, but I know they can take their Juice Plus capsules. And the scientists that did this study were really surprised at how high in polyphenols the capsules were. Not only that, you need a good microbiome to help process that. So the bioavailability and impact of polyphenols depends on the gut microbiota. And that's why I think this program is so helpful, because the Complete is feeding your microbiota. I mean, there's overlap. Both products are feeding your microbiota, but the Complete is really feeding your microbiota, and the shake, because it has more fiber. Juice Plus capsules also have fiber, and the capsules are a huge source of polyphenols. So then the good bacteria then can help you utilize the polyphenols you're getting from. So there's a synergistic like thing that happens when you combine the products. So again, I really believe in food for the healthful bacteria is the way to go, because we've all experienced these lifestyle challenges that have definitely messed with your, you know, gut ecosystem. And what can you do about it? Well, you know, here's Lisa Edelson talking about how to get your sexy back, and she's posing for people for the ethical treatment of animals, you know, whether it's animal rights or whether it's the environment, you know, many reasons that people choose to eat more plants. But here's Richard Simmons. He told us this a long time ago. This was a cover of Life magazine. I don't know if the young people probably don't recognize Life magazine, but he's been telling us this for a long time. So bone density, I want to talk about that too. As we get older, I'm sure most women are like looking at, you know, bone density, and you've probably been told to drink milk and take calcium supplements. And I just say no to that. You know, when I turned 50, I did everything. I had my teeth x-rayed, I did a DEXA scan, I did all these tests just to see where I was at. And so everything, you know, I came out squeaky clean. But I want to share especially the bone density results with you, because and even my gums, you know, the general comment was that I'm much younger than 50 biologically inside. So I talk about anti-aging. This really works. I've been taking Juice Plus for 22 years. So my approach has been to eat a lot of leafy greens and Juice Plus because that's your main source of calcium that you're going to get, bioavailable calcium. And not only that, you need to help the body be less acidic. And so when you eat acidic foods, like animal foods, animal products and processed foods are very, very acidic to the system. Then the bones leach out calcium bicarbonate to reduce that acidity because of the bicarbonate. It's like a salt, calcium bicarbonate. So the bicarbonate reduces the acidity and the calcium just goes down into the toilet, through your urine. So you lose the calcium in the process. So it's like a checking account where even if you put more calcium in, the bones aren't going to take it up just because you took a calcium supplement. You have to exercise and you have to have bioavailable calcium, which comes from leafy greens and Juice Plus, definitely. So I got my bone density done through DEXA scan, which is very sophisticated. And I just want to show you, the technician that was doing it during it, he was giving me the calcium and dairy lecture. But afterwards, he wrote, I just want to highlight like all these smiley faces and saying, wow, you have the bones of a 25-year-old girl. Now you might say to yourself, well, I haven't been eating Juice Plus for, that long. What's it going to do for me? Well, remember Bailey, I told you I will show you a picture of her son when she was having trouble getting pregnant, and this is her Juice Plus baby, but it's also Bailey's mom. And this is what Bailey says. 8 months ago, I started her grandma, oh, sorry, this is not Bailey, this is Bailey's grandmother, okay, who's 84 years old on Juice Plus caps and shakes. She's on prednisone and has to have bone density scans as it can have an adverse effect. Her GP was absolutely astonished when this year her density had not decreased, but had increased 11%. He had never seen this before in his career, and definitely not on a patient in their 80s, the power of plants. So it doesn't matter when you get started down the road of eating more plants, there's benefits to be had. And there's all this clinical research behind our products. If you kind of summarize it, there's 32 out of 35 of the papers that are on the internet are original articles on Juice Plus. If you go to juiceplus.com, you can look at the research that's been done. 3 of them are review articles on Juice Plus. 23 out of the 32 match the gold standard of clinical research of randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled. And all of the papers match good chemical practice in terms of duplication, like reliability, and good chemical practices are just mean that there's a certain standard that if I were to repeat the same experiment, I would get the same result. So basically what I want to leave you with is a game plan, hopefully, Shred 10 and taking Juice Plus, hopefully for life. Start with your first 4 months because it comes in 4-month supplies. That's a good amount of time to do some reversal of creating good microbiota. And during those 4 months, I suggest you take on a shred once a month at least. Some people choose to do more or less, but at least once is going to help you. And once you do it once, you'll realize, oh, this really makes me feel better. It makes a difference. So you'll understand how these guidelines really help you. So thank you so much for joining me today. And let there be peace, love, and understanding between you and your microbiota.